Welcome back. Another episode. It's been a few weeks since we were able to get together, but midsummer, some interesting light stuff to cover off, and obviously some topical uh, events in the news, specifically the tariffs. But we thought we'd also talk about some stuff that's closer to home, that's important to us, and some of the things that some of the listeners might find value in when it comes to building their businesses and their brands and so forth. So, Mike, why don't you start us off with some of the stuff that you were thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was talking about earlier on with you gents was the importance of building a personal brand. I think with the advent of AI, now we're seeing a ton of content being put out into the social networks. I think everyone is seeing this sort of stuff on LinkedIn, X, Twitter X, Instagram, and now the quality is so high in terms of the content and the production that's coming out because of the advent and the usage of these tools, these models getting so much better. So I think it's I was thinking about it today actually, and I was thinking about how important it is to kind of create your own personal brand as a business leader or as a sales leader or whatever position you're in, kind of having a brand and an image, because now there's just so much content being put out that you can end up being lost in the noise. And also, if you do use these tools, which I use the tools myself, I use AI. It could really supplement the content you're putting out there. It can help you amplify your voice. However, it's very easy to go down the rabbit hole of just not really having a direction and just putting out all kinds of stuff that don't necessarily align with your audience and the messaging you're trying to convey. And I've been guilty of this. Like, there's so much input of data now from news sources, from AI. It's like, okay, what do I want to put out there? We need to filter it now and be that voice that filters it and says, hey, you know what, this aligns with my brand. This doesn't align with my brand. This aligns with my messaging. And anything you're putting out, it shouldn't just be like throwing stuff against the wall. It should be very strategic in what you're saying, because you need to have a brand and an image, and you'll be identified by that. And if you don't, I think you're going to be at a major disadvantage. So those are some of the things I was thinking about. Maybe you guys can add to that. Like, what are you doing to stand out from the noise and keep that your own individual brands going, or what would you do if you wanted to establish that brand?
It's a good question because I don't have a personal brand. So, like I think to be the contrarian here, I think it's a really interesting question because I think we all, you know, at sort of a core level understand the importance of, you know, building a public persona that dovetails and is reliable. And, it's easier to filter through the noise if kind of people know what you stand for. But I think you touched on an interesting point, which is in the current era of content generation, it's very difficult, and it's only going to become more difficult to differentiate, right? And to essentially to try and break through the noise. And I think one thing that I haven't liked in some of the practices that I've seen is that people really stress the fundamentals of what they're trying to set out to do in order to get through the noise, right? And so maybe it's even undermining the original purpose of trying to, what do I want to be seen to be doing, or how do I want to be seen? And if that message isn't resonating, then people are kind of, trying a bunch of more shock and awe strategies that really undermine the original mission. So I think you touch on an interesting point, which is like, what is the purpose of the brand? Like, what are you trying to accomplish with your public persona, and what are you prepared to do to accomplish that? So I don't know
No,
what.
that's good, and I think it all starts from the vision. And let's talk about personal brand versus corporate brand. Those are two different things, and you can apply these strategies to either or. Like, just to be clear, so people could take this information and apply it to their corporate branding. Usually, it's much more difficult to build a corporate brand identity as opposed to an individual one. And we're seeing this more and more with the Elon Musks and the Jeffrey Bezos and the Zuckerberg. Like they've built up such a strong personal following that they essentially are the brand. Not to say that Tesla, Amazon, and those companies don't have a brand. Their branding is very strong. But some of these small organizations I'm seeing, the brand is the founder or the CEO or whoever that individual is. So if you are doing that branding as an individual, you have to treat it like the corporate branding. It has to stem from the vision, and it all stems from there. Like, what's the company's or your vision, and what does the vision entail? The vision entails, kind of like your core values. It includes your mission, kind of like your guiding principles. These are the things that you have to always take into consideration before you start trying to create this brand. Because like you said, Kyle, it's easy to just start putting out content, but sometimes you end up, there's just so much content, you're just trying to keep up with this pace of putting out content that it doesn't align with your original branding. So you always got to come back to that. What's my vision? What's my mission? What's my core values? And is this messaging or what I'm putting out for my branding, does it align with those things?
What are your thoughts, Andrew?
Yeah, you know what? That's it's interesting because the personal brand is you're right. Like it has such a profound impact on the company as well as the individual, right? So when you essentially portray yourself a certain way, that reflects on the company as well, as we saw with Elon Musk and Tesla, right? Tesla's is a great company. They're developing electric cars. They're doing extremely well, but the way Elon Musk's persona is now having an impact on the overall company. And so I think it's very important to build that brand, that personal brand, and be consistent with the company along with yourself, right? Like you can deviate a little bit, but what made up the company was essentially bringing it back to Elon Musk is that his vision of the future, his vision of where he wants to go with the company in the future. That got all mixed up when he started dabbling in politics, for example. And so that kind of deviate away from what people portray him as this futuristic founder that has a phenomenal vision to someone now as a political figure almost. So I think it's very important to stay aligned with the company vision, and what you set out to do at the beginning with the company. The founder and the company has to be aligned for that to work very well.
So it's interesting you say that because I find that that's a double-edged sword. So the Elon example is really fascinating to me because his company, specifically Tesla, for the vast majority of its history, has been a very progressive leaning company. Like when it was founded, it was again pure electric vehicles. Like it was adopted heavily in progressive countries and states like California. And so it was really interesting to see two things with his personal brand and the sort of changes that took on, because I think his views somewhat changed in recent years, politically especially. And there's a lot of people in the tech realm who have been public about their disillusionment with, let's say, the Democratic Party in the US. But one thing I found really fascinating is two things. So first of all, what you're mentioning, which is when he became aligned with the Republican candidate, Donald Trump, and he started putting his money into it and he started getting very involved personally, that didn't have anything to do with Tesla. But progressives started saying, I don't want to buy his vehicles because of his personal actions. So they, like you say, like his personal brand totally overtook and superseded Tesla. It even superseded, his other companies like SpaceX, which is interesting because we all know there's amazing, brilliant people at both of those companies that are doing everything. Like the vast majority, it's not Elon sitting at a desk doing stuff. It's employees. And, the actions of the consumers affect those employees. If they are selling fewer vehicles or, major SpaceX contracts are getting canceled, that has a potentially a material impact on definitely on the shareholders and the employees, less maybe so than Elon. So I think that's, I wouldn't say it's necessarily misguided, but I think that the commentary that I've seen and heard first person about that kind of stuff is really, it's very vindictive, but you're not really attacking the people you're not hurting Elon. You're hurting people that are working at these companies. And secondly, I was surprised at the inverse, which was the number of conservatives who, for, to generalize, these are like, diesel truck type people. And I live in a very conservative province, and I saw this firsthand as well. They started liking Elon, and they started speaking favorably about companies like Tesla for the first time ever because of his personal brand. So it was really interesting to see that it's almost like, he kind of it. Yeah, and I saw some people commenting about whether or not this was intended, but he kind of saturated a lot of the progressive leaning states and countries with the product. And then he sort of said, well, who isn't buying my vehicle? Well, I'm going to start aligning with them politically. And, there are a lot of people that went out and bought Teslas because of what the position that he took politically and his Republican support and stuff like that. So I find that really fascinating that, you're, like you say, the personal brand, and granted, he's unique in the sense that he's very well known. He's world's wealthiest man. He's built some amazing companies. Like he is a technical, superhero. And so I think it's really hard not to sort of take notice. And again, he's purchased Twitter, now X, which is far and away the largest, social media. More people consume content on X than anywhere else in the world, from all different countries. So, whatever when he's the most prolific tweeter, or he's sending out tons and tons of messages and demonizing certain people, or calling out Supreme Court justices and stuff like that in other countries, like, it's newsworthy. Like, people take notice. So I think there's a lot of factors that contribute. And the question comes back to is like, what type of brand do you want? And are you willing to roll the dice if you alienate, again, half of your base? Like we see this all the time with brands where they're like, oh, well, we're going to try and kowtow to certain jurisdictions, and we're going to, we're going to remove faces from movie posters in certain markets because they don't like it. And it's like, you guys, like, are we supposed to think that you're credible and buy your product because you do what you say, or are you just sort of speaking out of both sides of your mouth in order to sell a product? And I think, to Mike's point, like, the personal brand is far more powerful because people actually are thinking that you're going to be held accountable on a personal level, right? If you're found to be a hypocrite, your credibility is gone overnight, and it's going to take a long time, if ever, for you to build that back. Whereas if you do something and you deviate, you will be punished, and the people will hold you to account for whatever you're doing. So you need to be prepared. If you're going to put yourself out there on a personal level, you need to be prepared to back it up.
Yeah, and Elon's a bit of an extreme example. Obviously, he's an outlier. As you mentioned, he's built such a massive following. It's like a cult-like following, and he purchased Twitter X, so he has those intentions of using his presence or his brand as a platform, and he used it to take a very political view, and now he's going even further political. I guess he got into a point where he has so many eyeballs on him that now he's using this as a political method. And now I think he's launching the American Party.
Yeah.
So is that happening?
So this is another thing. So we can just have a quick, digression here. So I find this really fascinating as well, because it has absolutely no chance of being a major political party in the US. But what it does do is it's a really, really sharp spear when pointed in, specific person's direction. So let's say there's one candidate, congressperson or senator or whatever, who is not towing the line in terms of what public policy they desire. So let's say, their main thing is the debt. So let's say they're trying to pass a savings bill or a cost cutting bill, and there's two holdouts within the party, within the Republican Party, or even the Democratic Party, it doesn't really matter, that are essentially standing in the way. What that becomes is, it's really, really powerful if you then direct all of your attention and money and energy into trying to replace those two, or at least threatening to replace those two voices, right? Because you're no longer worried. You're not going to win an election. You're not going to win as a general party, but you definitely have enough power and enough clout, and especially with Elon, you have enough public perception and attention that you can challenge an incumbent very successfully. And that, that threat is enough to, at least it may not, you may have to replace one or two people at election time, but it's definitely enough for other people to say, I don't want to go down that road. It's not important enough to me. I'm going to toe the line, or I'm going to do things that are going to try and assuage, that risk in order to keep my job. So yeah, I thought that the strategic side of it is really fascinating, but again, it's not. I think people that are like, oh well, this is, he's trying to recreate, a political party. He's going to take on the GOP or the DNC. Like, it's never going to happen. But it's enough that he's definitely going to. I think he's going to sway some votes in Congress and stuff like that.
Interesting. And without going too far off topic, do you think it'll have an impact on the support that Republicans get? Because I don't know how the U.S. System works, but in Canada we saw that with the PPC party, where the PPC party launched, and some individuals that would normally vote conservative were then voting. If they were like really extreme right, they would vote for, I think it was Max Bernier. They would vote for him instead, when typically those voters would be voting for conservatives. So do you think that'll have an impact on the support Republicans get in the U.S. and take away some of their voter base?
Yeah, well, and let's be honest, like, if we think back to previous to the last general election in the U.S., one of the major concerns with RFK Jr. as a candidate was that he was going to split the Democratic vote, right? So the concern from the DNC was just that, which was, if you had a candidate that, again, had absolutely no chance of winning the general ticket, but they had enough clout, they had enough prestige and attraction and public messaging that they would pull votes, and more likely than not, they suspected that those votes would come from the Democratic side of the ticket. And so they did some really underhanded stuff to try and get them off tickets and so forth, which is a totally different topic. But that is a major concern. And again, Elon's party can do the same thing to either side, right? If it challenges if it challenges whoever is on the ticket for whichever party, that's exactly what it's doing. Is it's essentially threatening that seat, and it's at worst splitting the vote, and at best actually taking that seat. And but that's the thing, is that people would argue a lot that that's exactly what the political system is intended to do. Having a two-party system where you're kind of forced to vote one way or another isn't exactly how the system was structured to work. But at the same time, like, just in reference to the Canadian world, the Canadian political world, I think you see in the US, because of the size and because of certain jurisdictions, people do not vote along party lines as much as in Canada. In Canada, there's very few parties. Well, again, there's fewer parties in the US, but I think what you see is there's a large number of independents. And so one person will vote, let's say in 3 elections, they'll vote for different parties each time, or different candidates each time. So one may vote for a Democratic senator and then a Republican congressperson, man or woman, and then they'll vote for a different, a Democratic president or whatever. You don't see that in Canada. First of all, we don't have that variety. Like, we have one representative, and we don't elect senators. And whoever we elect, whose party gets the majority of the vote, based on the constituents, based on the seats that those constituencies hold, the leader of that party becomes a prime minister de facto. So it's not the same sort of structure as in the US. But I think that variety definitely makes it, and people's willingness to vote outside the ticket, I think is again, that makes that land, that fertile volatility, a lot easier.
Yeah, good points. But now I'm going to reel it back to the brand.
Yeah.
And then just so we could finish off on that. Another thing that people struggle with is, I would say, kind of what methods they're putting out their messaging. Like, what sources, first off, what channels are they going to? Are they doing it on Twitter, on Instagram, on LinkedIn? Are they writing blog posts? The cadence as well, like the cadence being how often they're doing it. And the third thing would be what type of content they're putting out. Is it video? Is it short form video? Is it images? Is it, like I said, blog posts? I think a lot of people struggle with that, and they're just experimenting with different things. If you guys were building a personal brand, or you're following someone that you guys probably follow some individuals that have strong personal brands. Let's start with cadence. Like, how often are these individuals putting out, videos or podcasts or articles? Like, is it a couple times a week? Is it every single day? Is it once a week? I know there's no right answer, but let's look at some people who've done it extremely well. How often are they posting?
Yeah, I would say the people that I have been impressed by, they're putting out tons and tons of content. But I think that goes with the territory, right? Like if you're you need to be prepared to do that, which I think scares a lot of people, myself included. Like I would struggle to put out content, worthwhile, deep thinking content 3 or 4 times a week. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I think I guess some of the followers that some of the I guess individuals that I watch and I pay attention to, they at least twice a week they usually do it, like on these specific days. But these are long form contents like YouTube and stuff. So this takes a lot of work, takes up a lot of time for them to produce. So usually they just do it twice a week.
Yes, so I would assume they have some form of content strategy then, where they're doing some more deep, meaningful stuff, which is like the long form YouTube videos, and then in between, maybe they're doing short LinkedIn or Twitter posts in between, and then maybe some other things where that's helping build their brand, where they're going on collaborative podcasts, going on a podcast with someone else, doing collaborative production. I think you need a strategy to do a bunch of things, and I agree with you. The frequency has to be pretty high. Unfortunately, you need to be putting out stuff. I think almost daily. I know it gets annoying if you're seeing stuff come out every single day, but in different forms, it's not. It has to be in different forms.
Yeah, and I think it's what I find interesting is the more successful ones are the one that really goes drill down into a very specific niche. It's whether it's motivation, business, startup, or something relatable, right? Like that those influencers generally do very well because they, like for example, there's beauty, like that's huge. And I remember when YouTube was, was there initially, people were coming up with like these beauty channels, and it took off, and now it became a big deal, and there's a whole market now for that, right? So yeah, I think it's just like people coming up with very creative ways to use these platforms and niching down to a very specific area that they can have an audience.
Yeah, I really like the YouTube form factor. Like I find myself on LinkedIn less and less, and I find that the personas that you see on LinkedIn are very manufactured. They're very sort of vapid, and I find the form factor, the YouTube form factor, is quite appealing because it has to be long form. Like they have the shorts format, but it's not, for the most part, it's not really why you would go. And in order to film a segment of any any sort of length, you need to have sufficient content. And so I find that, like, I personally enjoy those sorts of deep dives in certain areas. Like, again, I'm one of these people that likes to learn something. So if you're teaching me something, you're talking about, comparison videos or whatever, I enjoy that. Like, it's funny because I remember years ago, there was a contest. Another channel did a contest on who can get the most views on YouTube, and the video that won was doing an unboxing video, and everyone was like, how on earth does this make sense? Like, you're just literally unwrapping something and you're getting millions of views. But the thing is like, there are certain form factors that people really like and that do really well on YouTube, and that's one of them, where they just want to see how a product works, like what it looks like and what works, what doesn't. So I think that educational format is really powerful, and I find that the inverse of that, like the short and sweet stuff that you would potentially get on X, you need to be shock and awe in order to get traction, right? There's not enough depth there to sort of impress people, or like if you want to come across as knowledgeable, you just come across as arrogant, right? So you need to kind of be like the personas that do really well in that form factor. First of all, produce a ton of content, but a lot of it is tongue in cheek. A lot of it is like, lighthearted stuff like that. You can go shock and awe, but I think it has a short shelf life. But again, coming back to your original point, what is your brand? Like, what are you trying to do? Is it trying to sell something? Are you trying to create awareness for yourself? Or maybe you're just, again, like you're an Elon Musk and you're like, I want to be out in the ether and this is who I am, take it or leave it. I don't really care if you buy my products. And people that like him buy his products and people that don't buy his products. So
Yeah, and he doesn't put out much long form content at all, does he? Like all his stuff is tongue in cheek, like you said, just quick comments. But I guess he's built up the reputation to be able to do that. YouTube, the long videos are good, like you said, if it aligns with the branding and the vision, like you're there to educate, or the messaging you're trying to give requires something that's more of an in-depth dive. But I find that a lot of individuals now are getting lots of traction with the short form video, especially with people's attention spans shrinking and the competition for ear space and eye space. There's so much competition for it. I myself included. Think about yourselves, how busy you are on a day-to-day basis, and how many podcasts you listen to, and how many YouTube channels you follow. Like, I just don't. I get videos that I want to watch. I just don't have the time. So for me, I hate to say it, but I'm starting to de facto over to short form video. So like the YouTube Shorts, which is terrible for your brain. It's been studied and proven.
but
It's
what,
like,
okay, so Mike, what are you getting? Like, what is the draw? Like when you watch a video on a short video that's like 10 seconds, what is it that you're like, that was rewarding? Was it just the format? Because I think that has a lot to do with it. But like, what are you going back for?
yeah, so it's just I think it tickles your fancy. They just grab you with like maybe two key or 3 points. It's usually a 15-second YouTube short or Instagram video. Instagram does this very well, Reels, TikTok. It's like, hey, here are the top three things you should be looking at. Boom, boom, boom. And it just cuts through all the noise and gets your attention. Yeah, you're not learning a ton off of it, but it just gets those points across really effectively. And then I think if you want to get deeper into it, you need to have that's just the hook. That's just the hook to get the people in, and then you need to have a blog post on it or a long form YouTube video. But it's good at getting my attention and saying, hey, here are the most important things you should be looking at. Look at it now. Here it is, and then come learn more. Come learn more. Come talk to me, and I'll show you more. Take my course. Take my program. Subscribe to my YouTube channel where I discuss these things in further detail. It's the hook.
Yeah. But is it more focused on like the alarm? Like you guys are doing this wrong. You need to change this right now. Here are three things that you need to do today in order to make money tomorrow, kind of thing. Like, right.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's alarmist.
Yes, yes. That's typically how they get your
Yeah,
attention.
I don't get many of those recommendation on my reels though. Maybe it's because I what I watch, but and that's another thing too. It depends on what you watch, right? You get all these recommendation. Like I just get cars, like people flashing watches to me. Like I'm like, so maybe that's what catches my attention. But that is interesting because that's what happened is that once you reel in this type of audience, they keep seeing more and more of these type of content. So then, again, that's
The algorithm. It's
niching down.
the algorithm.
But it's interesting because it's like I'm watching it and I'm like literally it's all the same thing. And I one thing I notice is how fast it changes. Like as soon as you start watching a video, like and I watch something else for a tad longer, that topic start coming up a lot more. It changes so fast, it's crazy.
Well, I'll give you an example. Like, let's just talk about insurance. So, do you think with a potential, say your customer is like a business owner, mid-market business owner, uh, you know, 15, 20 employees doing 5 to $10 million in revenues, do you think a long form video talking about insurance would appeal to him? Or something like, hey, you know what? These are the three things your policy is probably missing, or the three things that you should look for in next renewal. I, what do you think is going to grab their attention more?
So I'll be the contrarian here because I've done a little bit of research on this and I find it really interesting. So first of all, did you guys know that the number one most valuable ad word in the world is insurance?
Oh, wow. I knew it was
So
expensive. I didn't know it was the most valuable.
huge value. So part and parcel of that is that insurance is not a topic that anybody really cares about unless they really care about it, right? Like it's a binary decision where it's like it's not something that you're going to casually follow and learn about. It's not, there's absolutely zero desire in like learning about risk when you're not like, oh, staring down the barrel of like, I need to fix something or I need to solve a problem today. And so what's trended is that they've discovered a lot of large brokerages and anyone in the industry has discovered that like if people want it or if people are searching for it, then they're likely going to buy. They're in a position to buy. And so they're willing to bid up that word because they want to be front and center. They want to be the first rank, number one page rank, SEO, all that kind of stuff, and get in front of those people that are willing to buy. Inversely, channels that have tried to do even short form, but definitely like you're saying, Mike, like long form insurance content, people, it's just not, it's not topical, right? It's difficult to get their attention and keep their attention. And they're not like, if you're in a position to buy something, like again, services are also really difficult because with products, you're able to go deep dive into what the product is and how it's built and what you did and all that kind of stuff. With the service, I typically find service offerings, finance, whatever. That's where you see here's 3 things you can do differently when you renew your mortgage, or like when you're going to finance a car, here are 3 things to look out for so you don't pay too much or whatever. Like, I think it's really difficult to differentiate those service offerings without that, if we were talking about carrot and stick, like the stick approach of trying to make people fearful and alarmist about like, oh, well, I don't want to get taken advantage of. I don't want to make the wrong move. I don't really understand insurance. I don't really understand car finance. So maybe I should watch this video. But they're not going to spend an hour doing a deep dive on it because it's boring, it's bland, right? And they don't, unless they need it right now, even if they need it right now, they're not going to spend an hour doing it. So I think I find that really interesting, that it's very hard to market that type of service. It's very hard, and you need to trigger that dopamine hit in order to keep people watching.
And this is why three insurance guys on a podcast rarely talk about insurance. We could talk about insurance for days, but we know that the attention is not there. Like you said, it's not topical enough. It's not top of mind for people. They're more interested in things that are more directly correlated to their day-to-day lives, their day-to-day businesses, and things that make or save them money. And insurance can do those things, but it's like a secondary, third.
It's like,
have you guys ever read Nicholas Taleb's book, The Black Swan?
I've heard about it.
Derivatives trader. I think it was his first or second book. That was his big breakout success. Anyways, one of the things he talks about is in the headspace of investing. So all of us have invested. When we watch a stock go up or down, if we watch it, the sort of how often we're looking at it, the frequency with which we're checking on the price directly correlates to how we feel about the stock. So the less you can look at something, the less seriously you'll take it. If you're watching your portfolio every hour, you're going to feel far more connected and also more invested in whatever that thing is doing. But the other thing that he brought up, which was interesting, was if you take a baseline of 0 and a stock goes up by 1 and another stock goes down by 1, you're going to be mentally far more impacted negatively from that negative swing than you're going to benefit from the positive swing. Because our brains evolutionarily, we're hardwired to really, really detect and flood our neural receptors with cocktails when things go badly, right? Like that's that dark bush over there. We don't know. There might be danger there, whatever.
Yeah. Fight or flight's a defense mechanism.
Yeah, but our prefrontal cortex responds very, very heavily to negative stimulus and not as nearly as much to positive stimulus. And so one thing that I find really interesting about the insurance conversation is it's by default a negative outcome product, which what I mean by that is if you don't have a claim, it sucks because you're paying a premium that you didn't use. And if you are using the product, it sucks because your house is burned down or your car's been totaled or whatever, and you're having to rely on this product. And 9 times out of 10, if you're going through that process, there's so many things that can go wrong. Like I just went through it myself and it was an absolute gong show. And I've been in the industry for 20 years. So it's like your knowledge of the content of the industry or of the product doesn't help alleviate the stress and the frustration and the annoyance of actually going through the process. And so it's just a lose-lose. And our bodies, our brains are tuned to say, I hate spending this money, I'm never going to use it. Or shit, I'm using it, I hate the fact that I'm using this and I'm not getting what I want out of it, or I'm not getting what I think I deserve out of it. And it's just it's a really tough psychological battle to wage, where it's just like people just do not, for good reason, they just do not like it. They don't want to deal with it. So I find that really interesting as well. So how the question is for those listening that have similar business lines, like what can you do to combat that? You know, the dopamine hit is important. I think you're describing exactly what you would want to do from a personal branding perspective, Mike, is like hook them to say, here are some things to be aware of. Unfortunately, it's probably the stick versus the carrot. You know, don't do this if you're going to, you know, buy a new vehicle or whatever. There are definitely things that people need to know that make their lives easier. But like, how do you make it? How do you turn it into a positive story rather than like I just don't want to spend the premium. It's not worth it. I hate claims, yada, yada.
Well, yeah, just I think just to comment on that is how do you spin it into something that people want to discuss, what people want to talk about? From my personal experiences, I when I go on Reddit and exploring a market that we're trying to penetrate, the high net worth individuals, some just watching and seeing some of the things that they discuss there on Reddit, right? So, interestingly enough. They do discuss one aspect, one product within insurance, and that's personal umbrella, right? And there's surprisingly when I jump in there to see what's being discussed, they really talk about their overall net worth and what level of value, like in terms of limit, what limit should they have on their personal umbrella, because this protects their asset, their net worth, right? Like that's what they're afraid of. But yeah, there was very little discussion around, hey, insuring my home, insuring my car. Nobody really discussed any of that stuff. It's mostly like, how do I ensure that my asset is not going to be touched, and how is it going to continue to grow? And that was a discussion around there, and they brought in insurance that, and that one time it was to talk about personal umbrella. So, things that are relevant, I guess. Think about yourself, like what's relevant to you, right? When what's relevant to people in insurance, like we don't want to see a house burn down and talk about insurance. We want to see what are these people insuring or something like that. Maybe that would give people the dopamine rush, like, hey, you know what, I've done really well and these are the kind of things that I insure, because I don't, you treat it the same way you treat your net worth or something like that. And what I find interesting with insurance is it's one of those products is like it's almost like a derivative, right? Like people understand stocks very well. People understand that it goes up and down, right? But people don't understand, for example, options. And insurance is an option. It's a put option on your property. It's a put option on your life. And it's interesting because people don't understand that. So, maybe that's why people shy away from it, because they don't really understand what am I paying for. Right. So it's a more sophisticated product, I find. So to really interest these people is to just show them the flashy things, what people like to see on these short form videos.
Yeah.
The junk food. It's the junk food, and that's how that. And you have to realize our audience is changing as well, and our audience, with the audience preferences are changing, the demographic is changing. You have new generations coming in that are going to want to consume content differently. So that has to all be taken into consideration as well. But I think we can dive a lot deeper into this, but I think this is a good starting point for people. So think about the vision, think about the mission, the value, think about your audience, what interests your audience, what message are you trying to convey to your audience, and then come up with a content strategy. Which channels am I going to put content out, and what form of content am I putting out, and how frequently? What's the cadence? So I think that would help people try to start to build that brand. It's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. It's definitely something that takes a massive commitment, as Kyle mentioned, and it scares off most because you have to be committed. And it's not like you can do this for a couple months and then stop and then try to start again. You have to remain consistent over a long period of time, and it requires a ton of time and energy to be able to put out that content. I don't know how a lot of these individuals find time to do it. I guess over time you get some support. You have people support you on creating that content. But now I guess we have AI to support us on creating that content.
Yeah, I like we were talking about before the show, like I'm really questioning what the next generation, like you alluded to, like how are they going to consume content? Because if let's say 5 out of 10, you know, content producers, let's call them, they're not people, let's say if they're half of them are AI, but let's say half of the channels or half of the people that you would like to follow are totally AI generated. Is that going to, and if you knew that they were AI generated, would you listen to their content any less or any differently? And if you didn't know that they were AI generated, would it concern you to know that they might be? Right. And I think that's a big thing that a lot of people like us are grappling with, but especially the younger generation has so far illustrated that they don't really care.
Yeah.
Right. Like if
They don't.
it's an AI, if it's a bot that's generating content, as long as they like the content, they're happy to watch it and they're happy to follow whoever's generating it. And so as a let's say a business owner or somebody that's looking to generate content to try and sell products and services, are you better off, rather than putting your own neck on the line, are you better off creating a new persona that represents, somebody within your brand, or somebody that's aligned next to your brand, that can do and say all the stuff that you want them to do and say, and frankly generate content for a fraction of a cent compared to what it used to cost to make long form feasible. So what are you guys' thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's, yeah, going back to, like, I guess the personal brand and everything. I think, focusing on that, producing good contents, valuable contents for the community, rather than trying to sell something like you're saying, Kyle. Like, just really focus on producing good contents, good quality contents, where people want to ingest it. And then what I find is that people are more receptive to that, because when I feel, as soon as people realize that you're trying to sell them something, you're losing audience, right? So they start to question, is this person trustworthy? Should I be listening to them? Because they're trying to do is sell something to me. So I guess putting out good content, trustworthy content, and building that solid personal brand for yourself is eventually, when people find out that, hey, Michael works for this company. He seems like a trustworthy individual online, providing me with lots of good contents. I'll buy from his company, or he's the first that comes to mind, right? Like, I think that's essentially how, I guess, we should tackle a lot of this new generation of marketing, rather than try and say, hey, you know what? Anything that I produce is gonna try to sell something or tie back to my product somehow. I'm finding that people have this reaction to that.
You know who does a good job with that? Alex Hormozy. Alex Hormozy's, his big philosophy is just provide like so much value that people refuse, like they can't refuse you or they can't ignore you. So I like that's his big thing. I know now he's starting to monetize on that audience, but he's built up a massive following by just creating so much value without trying to sell things. Obviously he's trying to sell things, but he's also giving back so much value. So he launches so much of his stuff for free, and then people, it's like that reciprocity, Andrew. And then people just feel like they like him now. They feel like they know him, and I guess he's used his face a lot as well. I guess that's important. Kyle, to answer your question, like a bot won't have that, or if they do have it, it's a fake. I guess AI is getting so good that it'll look like a real person, but it's not the same, and we have to remain hopeful that it won't be seen as the same. Because if we do think like that, then what's the point of even creating content? What's the point of creating a brand? What's the point of having relationships? As of now, I still want to relate to a person. Will my kids want to relate to a person? I don't know, but I'm just going to remain hopeful that they will want to. So just get your face out there, get yourself out there, deliver lots of value, like Andrew said. And you have to, basically, people have to feel like they really align with you. So your messaging has to be very consistent and very clear in addressing what those people want. Like Alex Hormozy, for example, everything he talks about is really right up my alley. It's everything that, as a business owner, I'm interested in. So I align with him, and anything he puts out, I ingest it, it cuts through everything else, and I take a lot of it to heart. Maybe I shouldn't, but I align well with him as a person.
What's an example?
Yeah, an example is he talks about the struggle of building a business, and this is a struggle that I can relate to because it's a struggle I went through. So he talks about the struggle and taking shortcuts versus doing it the proper way. Basically, it's things that you can relate to as a founder. But he's very clear. This is his audience. He's not trying to talk to children. He's not trying to talk to people entering a stage of retirement or looking to buy houses. Or he's talking to people looking to start businesses. So he's very specific on his audience, and he's very specific, and his messaging is all around that, building a business. So it's just relatable, and he's likable.
Fair play. What about you, Andrew?
Yeah, like I've also followed some of his some of Alex Hermosi's content. I think I find him interesting. Again, he adds value. That's essentially what he does, and it's relatable. Some of the things like I can comment on one of the things that he posted, and I think Mike, you sent it over to me. It was don't be don't be cheap on hiring talents, right? Like if you want the best of the batch, you want the best talent, you want to make your life easier, so you got to spend to hire the best to now make your life easier. Because if you hire individuals that may not be the best, they will actually create more work for you. So things like that makes sense, right? Like it's very it's generic enough, but it's relatable to a very large.
I mean, that was short form. It was short form. It was in one paragraph, and basically he tailored it really nicely. It costs you more money to be cheap with employees, with staff. So he's just very short how he put it out there. Obviously more eloquently than I'm saying it, but it was just basically saying, hey, if you're cheap with your hires, your staff, it's going to cost you more money, and here's why. All right, I don't even think he got into the here's why.
No,
Yeah, Andrew?
he just said it's just a statement. He just throw that statement out, and it wasn't in a video. It was just him, throwing a little statement on his thing. But again, he's built up an audience. I know
And trustworthiness. Yeah, he has the trustworthiness now. People trust him.
He had like some contents at the beginning, and really targeting the right, I guess, platform. I think we can, if we were to summarize this podcast today, I think is picking and choosing your platform is so important because he knows the platform where his audience resides, right? And that's if it's LinkedIn, if it's on Instagram, is it on TikTok, is it on Facebook? Where are my audience, right? Where are the audience that's going to watch my content? And I think that's really, really key. And we touch on that at the very beginning, right? It's all these platforms offer different audience, and picking the right one is crucial.
Cool. All right. Final thoughts. Where do people get started, Mike? What's first step if I want to build my personal brand today?
To take time to work on the vision. And I'm not just saying to do it in like 30 minutes. Like even my vision is still, it can constantly come back to it too. It takes time. I still need to refine it myself, basically spend lots of time soul searching, thinking about it. Where do you want to be? Like a perfect scenario. If you think about that perfect scenario for yourself in 5 to 10 years, I've done this and I've delivered this value to these people. Like really try to go far on where you want to be and what success looks like for you, and then reel it back in and put it onto like a really nice vision board. I would start there, and I think we all need to do that. I need to improve mine, improve my core values, improve my mission, improve all those things. So just that's where I would start before you even start trying to. Why put content out if you don't really know what you're talking about or the direction you're heading?
Fair enough. Good advice. All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.